Man is mortal. What that means is that all of us will die. The only people who will not die are the ones who, when the trumpet sounds, that will still be alive. And the Bible tells us that the shout of the trumpet, those who are in Christ Jesus will be transformed to meet the Lord in the air. Those who are dead will resurrect. All of us will meet the Lord in the air. However, that's only one small section. The majority of the people from the creation of the earth to the time Jesus comes, their destiny is to die. And so we really need to deal with this as an important subject for every humankind. To imagine that you'll not die isn't wise at all. To be afraid of dying is even worse, because that means you die before you die. I've written a book called The Secret of Contentment, and I say you really never get contentment until you can understand death and deal with death so that it no longer frightens you. That's why the Hebrews message is very important. When Hebrews says the reason Jesus came on earth was to rescue us, human beings, who all our lives lived under the fear of death. That means one major mission for Jesus coming on earth was to deal with the fear of death, so that we no longer are supposed to be afraid of death. That doesn't mean we are not afraid of pain, because pain is meant to be feared. Pain is supposed to send you to a doctor. So if you don't feel pain, you have a problem, a bigger problem. That's why leprosy is such a serious disease, because you can step on fire and you don't feel any pain. But you are still being burnt. You'll be minus your leg. And they all came from lack of pain. So do not start understanding lack of fearing death to be lack of fearing pain. Pain is supposed to be feared. But many people don't suffer double. When they are sick, they are afraid of the pain they are going through, but they're also afraid of the consequence of dying. And we are learning that it will be important to understand that death for a Christian is not something to be feared, because you should have sorted out the matter with God so that you know. Why should we not fear death? Number one, because for sure it's coming. So how can you be afraid of going to an appointment you are sure you must go? And it's important to have that in the back of mind. It will come. It's only the timing is in God's hands. It is a secret. You don't know when it will come. The second thing is to know that the place you go after death, if you're a Christian, is better. In fact, it says to be absent in the body. That means you are no longer inside this body, you are dead. It's to be present with the Lord. That means there is no in between. As soon as you leave this body with all its limitations, you are in the hands of God and the joy of living eternally with Him. So it's something good, something to look forward to. It's going home, to a better home than your other home. And it is an important thing. So when you think about death, you think about going to an open home. A songwriter said that death becomes a door that opens to your eternal home. And that's something that can make you no longer be afraid of death. And thirdly, the reason why you not be afraid of death is because He has promised to be with you. Isn't that the message of Psalms 23, when you say, even when I go through the valley of the shadow of death, you'll be with me. In other words, the process itself, God's presence will be with you. And that's something that you need to deal with. So death is something that all of us are likely to face, are most likely to face, but it's not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced when it comes. However, suicide is not scriptural. The same God who gave the 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not kill. That includes you. Your life is not your own. You cannot determine when to die by committing suicide. And when you do, unlike other sins where you have time to repent, if you actually succeed in your suicide, you die without repentance. And so you you choose to go to hell. And I think that's terrible. That would be really terrible, to not only have trouble in this life, and then you ensure you have trouble in the life to come. Isn't something very good. And that's why you cannot commit suicide. And then the other thing you need to understand is that the reason God keeps you on earth is because he has a mission for you. Paul put it graphically and he said, for me to live is Christ. In other words, if I live, my life is to honor God. How would you want to go to God before you accomplish the task he has actually given you? You should not be looking forward to die. Whether it is wonderful to go home to be with the Lord, you are not supposed to want to go before you do your assignment. It's important to understand, for me to live is Christ. But Paul said, if truth be told, for me to die is gain. In other words, if I were to die, that's far much better for me. I'll be at peace, I'll be rested, and I'll not need to fight animals and men in my journeys, missionary journeys. So it's an attractive thing. But in as long as you are a child of God, it will be important that you then understand that he has given you on earth some work to do, and you are not supposed to stop doing it until he calls you home. So do it. So you cannot sit there wanting to die. And if you are suicidal, you need to deal with it as a sin, as something that the devil is whispering to you on, and something that you need to fight, and you need counseling, and you need prayer, and you need to come back to God. Being suicidal is not something that you would want for anybody, because by being suicidal, you are choosing to go to hell, and that's not a very, very good thing. So I think it's important to be clear about the issues of death, because man is mortal, therefore they will die. It needs to be dealt with. One of the weaknesses of this subject is that we don't talk about it except during a funeral. But during a funeral is the wrong time to talk about it, because if you started speaking basic facts about the dead, the relatives are likely to feel you don't care about them. So you can't tweak, theologizing about death during a funeral. You need to just concentrate on comforting the living rather than talking about death. Now, so if you can't talk about it during a funeral, and you can't talk about it when there's no funeral, in the end, many people, even Christians who have been Christians for a long time, have never had a proper theology of death. And that's why you find people that are supposed to be Christians, and like I have mentioned in my recent book of the Christianity and Culture, our view of death, our system of burial, our funeral and mourning systems are not biblically based. They are more culturally based. The beliefs about ancestral worship and the issue about the body of the dead is all to do with culture rather than, for example, you ask yourself, I was in a burial somewhere and the pastor was saying, no, the head must face a certain direction. I said, where is that in scripture? But you see, tradition, that's the way, and he has imported, that's what you call obscurantism. He has imported a teaching out of culture and made it part of the church. Because since we don't study the scriptures in order to explain about death and funeral, so in the end, our interpretation and most of the ways we are mourning as a way of backing our belief system, which is traditional rather than biblical. And it will therefore be an important issue to study. Like, look at my book. I look at the issue of death from a Christian perspective and death from a cultural perspective and try to compare the two. But the basic thing is, for a cultural perspective, death is to be feared. But even after death is feared, the person who has died gains more power, because people fear the spirits of the dead. And I normally call it the dictatorship by the dead on the living. Even when they were not very clearly, when the guy was sick, he tried to appeal for money for hospital, not they paid. If the guy dies, the money that is raised for the burial is unbelievable. Why? It doesn't make sense. You should have spent all your effort trying to save him from dying. Now he's dead. It's when you are using expensive methods of burial. It's because you fear the spirit could visit you at night. That's not biblical perspective. It's all to do with our cultural perspective of what death is. But I want to look at the death of Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 34 and see how he parted after serving the Lord for that long. God told him he was going to die in the earlier chapters of Deuteronomy. And then finally in chapter 34, he's gone. Just look at Deuteronomy 34, verse 1. It says, "Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah across Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negeb, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I've let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it." At least Moses got a farewell. He was prepared. God prepared him for death. And he tells him to go to the top of Pisgah. Pisgah is a mountain in Moab, because from there he will be able to see across the Jordan, right across towards the Mediterranean Sea, to see the land that they are going in to possess. So he climbs to Mount Nebo from the place of Moab right up to the top of Pisgah, and he can see Jericho. He can see land of Gilead, of Dan. He can see land that was going to be given to Naphtali, the land that was going to be given to Ephraim and Manasseh, and even the land of Judah, right up the Mediterranean. Let me ask you, you need to understand that not everything you have wanted will have ended. Are there things you feel like, if this is not yet done, I don't want to die? It's important to understand that Moses had hoped to take the children of Israel right up to Canaan, across the Jordan. But God told him, what you have done is enough. That's enough. You will not cross the Jordan. And we need to live like that. We are trying to do the best we can to finish what we are finishing, but we know that God understands it better than us. So that's why you should live your life so that you are not dispensable. You are not indispensable. Life can go on, even if your heart just stopped. Things can go on. The project God has given you can go on because you trained others and you had a proper succession planning. That's basically what Moses is discovering, that he is going to leave some of the tasks undone. Some have been done, and he has done very well. He was able to get the children of Israel out of Egypt. He's also been able to supervise over the period of time they have been going around the desert, so that the older people are all gone, including him. He's also about to go. That he did fantastically. He was able to deal with a very difficult group of people who are not really seeing action, At least if they cross the other side, they'll be able to fight and there'll be action. That he was able to achieve. But there was still something that was not yet achieved. And I want you to understand the same way that since God does not necessarily tell you when you will go, you must live your life such that you work with others so they can continue with or without you. And you should not start stopping to work because you will not finish everything. No. That's why there is no retirement for a child of God. Because if retirement means you have finished work, now you are waiting to die, that's not allowed. My friend Moses worked right up to the last day. He goes to Pisgah, sees a cross, he doesn't come down, he dies there up the mountain. So it's important to live your life such that there is no time you are idle. Of course, you can have the physical disabilities, that stop you doing certain types of things because of your age. But as long as you have breath and a clear mind, seek what you can do, even if your legs may not be cooperating. It's important that you serve the Lord right up, like Moses, to when you go over to the other side. I do not know what it is you want to do, but you need to be doing something. That means you should never think of the term retirement. Retirement may be change of jobs, and it's important to get your pension. But the pension is so that it facilitates you to serve the Lord continuously in a different way. So that's what Moses teaches us. Even as we talk about death, we should not sit there waiting, oh, when am I dying? Oh, my grandfather made me laugh. My grandfather lived to above 100 years. And the interesting part is that when he was now above 100, he kept asking me, John, is there anybody of my age left? And sure enough, I never found anybody of his age who was still alive. Because he said, then I tell you, oh, so and so, that one was born when I was already a big boy. So there wasn't anybody. And then he kept saying, hey, what did I do wrong to God? He has forgotten to take me. No, that's not the you must find out, with all your limitations, what is it you can still do, rather than sit there waiting to die. It's not a very good thing. Because you see, it's not your area, it's not your prerogative. When you die, it's God's prerogative. So you should serve him right up to the final day, according to the abilities he has given you. Physical limitations, okay, but you must continue to serve the Lord right up to the last day. Verse 5 is saying, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth-peor. But to this day, no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days until the time of weeping and mourning was over. So he's finally dead. He has been prepared. He has been told things. Then he dies up the mountain. And people imagine God himself buried him. Because he never came down. He just stayed there now. And nobody knows exactly where the grave is. So it's important to understand, sometimes we are so worried about the grave, where we will be buried. And God is capable of getting us to, and after all, even if you die, even if there's nobody to bury you, you will smell on people until they have no alternative than to bury you. So you should not live for burial. There are people who live wondering, hey, how will I be buried? It's irrelevant. It is the people who are left alive who bother with your body. You are already in God's hands and rejoicing. What they do with your body is totally irrelevant. That's why for Moses, God did not allow anybody to handle the body. And you need to have the same kind of view yourself, that your body, what they do with your body is of no consequence. And it's important to understand that are you understanding that once you are dead, you have no dealings with the living. Once Moses died, there is no way he could communicate. Those people he had led for over 40 years, he could not communicate with them. So these traditional beliefs about the dead talking, so I saw so and so in the dream, or it's not scriptural. You are not allowed to deal with the dead. People who are alive have absolutely nothing to do with the dead. If you want to talk to me when I'm still alive. Once I'm dead, you cannot communicate with me. But better still, I cannot communicate with you. That's why the rich man and Lazarus story in the New Testament says clearly that the people that have been left behind, because this rich man is saying, this is hell, it's terrible. Give me an opportunity to go back and tell them they should avoid ever coming to this hell. He said, no, they can't. Let them read the books of Moses. There is no communication between the dead and the living. And it's important to understand that once somebody is dead, like Moses died, he couldn't, there was no way he was going to have any dealings with the living. But the living had to mourn. What is to mourn? It's not to bury. Like in this case, there was no burial. It's to have memory. Talk about the things that you learned from the life of Moses. Have a chance to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying because of the loss. Because the loss is real. You'll never see him again. But you don't require to do anything with the body. The body is already taken care of. They actually were in mourning for 30 days, a whole month, just crying and remembering the things that God had taught them through Moses and the kind of experiences that was now in their heritage because of being with Moses. So it's important. Mourning should be a time of remembering, talking about the person who has died. Because as you tell the stories, it will comfort the family. As you say how the guy who has died, what impact he had on you, it helps his children to realize how valuable their father is, and it's a good memory for the children to have. So the funeral meetings should actually be a time of telling stories about the positive things, not the negative ones, the positive things about what the man did. That way you actually comfort the family. It will be very, very, very important. But it should never be talking to the dead. There are people who, you in a funeral, they keep saying, you have left us, you did. And you see it in the newspaper, people talking to the dead. That's a waste. You have no idea that God has not allowed us to know whether the dead would ever get the message. But it's very clear he does not want you to talk to them. So why are you being childish and talking to a dead body if God has already told you there is no, that dead body is not the person, and his spirit is not anywhere near the dead body? The spirit of the dead is not anywhere near the burial ground, because it is with the Lord. To be absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. So it will be important that you do not talk to a dead body as if the person is alive. You should be talking to that person. He did, not you did. And to write in the newspaper, even sometimes you write memorial. And instead of talking about the memorial, a memorial is remembering the person. You address yourself. You left us 1 year ago. He can't hear. It's childish and a waste of money to pay a newspaper just to say something that doesn't make sense. So it will be important that you understand. So I like in this case, Moses was buried, so the funeral and the burial are totally different. He was buried by God, or at least that's what they think. Deuteronomy 34 verse 9 says, now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. So it was very clear to the Israelites who was going to lead them, given the kind of investment Moses done on his assistant. And I think that's what I was saying. It's important to create a succession plan such that even if you disappeared, matters can actually still go right on. One of the things he did was to lay hands. And like he said before, it's important to understand Moses was not a source of blessing. By laying hands, it's a prayer. You are praying to God to give wisdom to Joshua. After he's gone, God answered the prayer. And so now Joshua, son of Nun, has a lot of wisdom as per prayer. That's what I keep saying. You need to understand, as parents, we are not source of blessings. You cannot bless your children. By talking about blessing your children, what you mean is, I'm praying that God will bless them. Because once you are gone, you are gone. But if you have prayed for your children, God will hear and will bless them. And because he himself is not going, he is immortal. He doesn't die. He will bless them even when you are absent and they are on their own. Verse 10 says, since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. That's what mourning is all about. To see clearly that you need to understand clearly that you have a God who was able to move with Moses, and when you talk about it, and he's a God who doesn't have a sell by date, then you understand that the blessings of God that were on Moses can also be on you. That's why we talk about the people who have gone, because in the process you are able to see what God can do, and because He is not respected of persons, you know He can also do those things. He has not changed. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. I like reading biographies, especially of people that made impact. There's a guy called Ladson, I think Robert Ladson or whatever, who has been writing books that are called God's Generals. And I really like reading them. And now I realize they are also in YouTube. You can get shorter versions by listening to him telling the story verbatim. And it's wonderful to just see what God was able to do in days gone by, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and realize that the God who was there in the 19th century is also the God of the 20th century. And we are now in the 21st century. He's still our God. So funerals should keep talking about the things God has done through these people. And if it is God, it therefore means that He is still available and can help you to do those things that the guy did. Of course, here they are admitting that by the time of the writing, nobody had done the kind of things that Moses has done. But we have seen many other things done after that, because God has not changed. At least now in the New Testament, we see many dead people rising, and I don't think that's something that Moses ever did. So it's important to start understanding that that the stories, as we tell them in the morning, they are to remind us about the God who was with this person. Number two, it becomes our prayer item. When you are praying, God, you can do this. I know you are able to do. You did it for so and so. It helps us to have trust in God. He will walk with us. But thirdly, it also helps us to know we shall go. That's one of the things that funerals do. They make death real. And it's a Bible that says that I get more wisdom out of the house of mourning than out of the house of rejoicing. Get more wisdom. And that's true. Death is an opportunity for wisdom, because as people see the reality of life, how mortal they are, it makes them know we are not lasting forever, and that they need to be able to trust in God and trust His guidance, but be aware they have a sell by date, so they need to serve the Lord even more seriously before that time really comes. So as we finish, we are talking about death, and you're using the example of the death of Moses. Number one, to say it is something that is an appointment you cannot miss, an appointment that is for sure something that will be important to keep. But number two, it is important to know that death is something that will bring hope, so that we who are alive should look forward to it and not fear it. But finally, it is important that death reminds you cannot waste time. You have only got so far, but no further. So do what God has asked you to do. And the earlier you do it, the better. The more important is every day live it like it's the last, and every day live like you have tomorrow. Thank you very much.